Story 1: The Spare Child. For most of my childhood, I thought my family was normal. I thought every family had one kid who could get away with almost anything and another kid who was expected to carry the weight of everyone's problems. I didn't realize how unhealthy it was until I got older and started spending time around other families where children were actually treated equally. In my family, my older brother Ryan was the person everyone protected, defended, and made excuses for. I was the person everyone expected to understand, forgive, and sacrifice. Looking back now, I don't think my parents ever sat down and decided that Ryan mattered more than me. It wasn't that obvious. It was something that happened slowly over years, through thousands of small moments where I learned that my feelings mattered less, my achievements were less important, and my role in the family was basically to make things easier for everyone else. Ryan was the golden child. I was the child who was expected to deal with it. My earliest memory of this happening was when I was 7 years old. I had been asking for a blue mountain bike for months, nothing expensive or fancy. I wasn't asking for the newest model or some huge gift. I just wanted a bike so I could ride around the neighborhood with the other kids after school. When my birthday finally arrived, I woke up early and ran downstairs, expecting to see it waiting for me. Instead, sitting on the table was a small wrapped box. Inside was a board game and a sweater. I smiled because I didn't want to seem ungrateful. Even at that age, I understood that money could be tight, and I knew my parents worked hard. Then Ryan walked downstairs. My dad immediately smiled. "Ryan, come here, we have something for you." He opened the garage door and revealed a brand new mountain bike. Not just any bike. The exact type I had been asking for. I remember standing there quietly, looking at the bike, and then looking back at my parents. I thought maybe there was another one hidden somewhere. Maybe mine was coming later. So I asked, "What about my bike?" My mom looked uncomfortable for a second before saying, "Honey, Ryan needs one more than you do." I remember looking at her because I didn't understand. "But it's my birthday." My dad immediately frowned. "Don't start." That phrase became something I heard a lot growing up. Don't start. It didn't matter if I was upset for a good reason. It didn't matter if I was asking a simple question. Somehow, bringing up my feelings was always considered creating a problem. As we got older, the difference between Ryan and me became even more obvious. When Ryan forgot homework, my parents would say things like, "He's been under a lot of pressure lately." When I forgot homework, I would get a lecture about responsibility and how I needed to think about my future. When Ryan broke something in the house, it was always an accident. When I made a mistake, it became a lesson about my character. I remember one time, Ryan accidentally damaged my dad's expensive tools while messing around in the garage. My dad looked at the broken equipment side and said, "He's still young, he'll learn." A few months later, I accidentally scratched the side of my dad's car while learning to drive. It was a small scratch. My dad acted like I had destroyed his entire life. He spent almost an hour explaining how careless I was and how I needed to respect other people's things. At the time, I thought maybe I really was worse than Ryan. Maybe I really did deserve the criticism. It took years before I realized the problem wasn't that I made more mistakes. The problem was that my mistakes were remembered forever, while Ryan's were always forgiven. The money situation started when Ryan was in high school. I had started doing small jobs around the neighborhood, mowing lawns and helping older neighbors with yard work. I wasn't making much, but I was proud of myself because I was earning my own money. I saved most of it in a small box hidden in my room. One afternoon, Ryan walked in while I was counting it. "How much do you have?" I immediately covered the money. "Why?" He laughed. Relax, I'm not stealing it. I just need to borrow some. I asked what for. Gas. I knew he didn't even have a car yet, but I didn't want to argue. How much? 50. I hesitated before handing it over. When are you going to pay me back? He smiled. Probably next week. Stop acting like I'm some stranger. I believed him. That was my first mistake. A week passed. Then another. Eventually, I asked him about it. Oh, I forgot. I'll get you later. Later never came. A few months after that, he needed money again. This time it was for his phone bill. Then it was for clothes. Then it was because he had spent too much going out with friends. Every time, it was the same promise. I'll pay you back. He never did. Over the years, the amount slowly grew. Hundreds became thousands. Every time I brought it up, someone in the family made me feel guilty. One day, I asked my mom if she could talk to Ryan about paying me back. She looked surprised. You're seriously keeping track? I stared at her. Yes. She shook her head. He's your brother. I know. Family doesn't keep score. That sentence bothered me because it only seemed to apply when Ryan owed me something. Nobody said family doesn't keep score when I was the one being asked to sacrifice. The biggest moment came when I was 19. I had worked extremely hard in school and was accepted into an engineering program at a university several hours away. It wasn't an easy decision. Moving away meant leaving my friends, working harder, and taking on more responsibility. But it was my chance to build my own life. I was excited. I remember telling my parents the news and expecting them to be proud. Instead, a few days later, they called me into the living room. My dad looked serious. We think you should stay closer to home. I thought maybe they were worried about money. I can handle it. My mom shook her head. It's not about that. Then what is it? She looked at my dad before saying, Ryan needs support right now. I honestly thought I misunderstood her. What does that have to do with me going to school? My dad sighed. Your brother has been struggling. He dropped out. Exactly, he needs his family. I stared at them. So you want me to give up this opportunity because Ryan needs someone nearby? My mom immediately became emotional. Don't make it sound like that. But that's exactly what you're asking. My dad leaned back. Sometimes family requires sacrifice. That sentence stayed with me for years. Because I realized something important. In my family, sacrifice always seemed to go in one direction. Mine. I accepted the university offer anyway. For the first time in my life, I chose myself. My parents weren't happy. They didn't say they were disappointed, but I could feel it. They treated my decision like I had abandoned them. Meanwhile, Ryan continued living his life exactly as before. Nobody asked him to sacrifice anything. Nobody asked him to change. They just expected me to make room for him. College was difficult, but it was also the first time I felt free. I worked part-time. I studied constantly. I paid my own bills. I learned how to depend on myself because I had no choice. And slowly, something changed. I stopped waiting for my family to approve of me. I stopped trying to prove I deserved the same respect Ryan received automatically. I started building a life that belonged to me. And I had no idea that years later, the same family members who ignored my struggles would suddenly remember I existed. The Spare Child Part 2. College was the first time in my life where I wasn't constantly comparing myself to Ryan. I wasn't the younger brother who was expected to be more patient, more understanding, or more willing to give things up. Nobody at university knew my family history. Nobody cared that my brother was considered the favorite. They only cared about what I could do and how hard I was willing to work. For the first time, I felt like I was building something that belonged entirely to me. It wasn't easy. I worked evenings while taking classes during the day. There were weeks where I barely slept because I was balancing assignments, exams, and bills. I remember eating cheap meals because I needed to make my money last until my next paycheck. But even during those difficult years, I felt happier than I had at home. Because every accomplishment was mine. Nobody could say I only succeeded because someone helped me. Nobody could take credit for it. After graduating, I found a job at a small engineering company. It wasn't a huge corporation, and I wasn't making an incredible salary right away. But I enjoyed the work, and I liked the people there. My first apartment was tiny. The kitchen was barely big enough for one person to stand in comfortably, and my old car made strange noises every time I started it. But I loved that apartment. It represented something important. Independence. For the first time, I wasn't living under someone else's expectations. Meanwhile, Ryan continued making the same choices. He went through jobs quickly. Every few months, there was a new plan, a new opportunity, a new reason why things weren't working out. At first, everyone supported him. My parents constantly told him he was finding himself. When I heard that, I almost laughed. Because if I had changed jobs constantly or made careless decisions, they would have called me irresponsible. With Ryan, they called it ambition. The money requests continued. Even after I moved out, he still found reasons to call. Can you help me with rent this month? My car needs repairs. I just need a little help until things improve. Sometimes I helped. I don't want to pretend I never did. I loved my brother. Despite everything, he was still my brother. I wanted him to succeed. But the problem was that helping Ryan never actually helped him. It just delayed the consequences of his decisions. Every time he got into trouble, someone stepped in and fixed it. He never had a reason to change. Eventually, I learned to say no. The first time I refused, Ryan sounded genuinely shocked. Seriously? Yes. It's only a few $100s. I can't do it. You can. That bothered me. Not I need help. Not can you please help me. Just, you can. Like my money automatically belonged to him. When I didn't change my answer, he called my parents. Within a day, my phone rang. My dad didn't even say hello before saying, "Your brother told me you refused to help him." I already knew where the conversation was going. Yes. Why? Because I don't want to keep giving him money. My dad sighed. I thought we raised you better. That sentence hurt more than I expected. Not because I believed it. Because I realized they truly thought I was the problem. A few years passed, and my life quietly improved. The company I worked for started growing. The owners gave some employees the opportunity to invest in the company because they wanted people who believed in its future to have a stake in it. Most people took the immediate bonus money instead. I chose the shares. At the time, it wasn't because I expected to become wealthy. I simply believed in the company. I was thinking long-term. Years later, that decision completely changed my life. The company was acquired by a much larger firm. Those shares that I had almost forgotten about became worth far more than I ever expected. After taxes and everything was settled, I suddenly had financial security. Not private jet money, not celebrity money, but enough that I no longer had to worry about bills. Enough to pay off my debts. Enough to buy a comfortable home. Enough to finally breathe. I made one decision immediately. I wasn't telling my family. Not because I wanted to punish them, because I knew exactly what would happen. The moment they found out, I would no longer be the person who struggled alone. I would become the solution to everyone's problems. And I was tired of being treated like a resource instead of a person. So I kept living normally. I drove the same car. I wore normal clothes. I didn't post expensive vacations online. I didn't show off. I simply enjoyed having peace. Then one day, everything changed. My phone rang. It was my mother. I almost didn't answer because we hadn't talked much recently. But something in her voice sounded serious. "We need to talk." Those words immediately made me nervous. Usually when someone says, "We need to talk," it means something is about to become your responsibility. "What happened?" She hesitated. "It's about Ryan." Of course it was. I went to my parents' house that weekend. When I walked inside, I immediately noticed the atmosphere was different. Ryan was sitting at the table. He looked exhausted. The confidence he always carried was gone. My dad had paperwork spread out in front of him. For a moment, I actually felt bad. I thought maybe something serious had happened. Then my dad spoke. "Ryan's business failed." I nodded slowly. "What happened?" Nobody answered immediately. Eventually, Ryan said, "I made some mistakes." That was probably the first honest thing I had heard him say in years. He had started a business a few years earlier. Then another. Then another. Each time he borrowed money. Each time he expanded too quickly. Each time he believed success was right around the corner. But he never created a real plan. He spent money as soon as it came in. He bought expensive equipment, expensive vehicles, and expensive things because he wanted people to think he was successful. Now the debt had caught up with him. My dad pushed the paperwork toward me. "We need your help." I looked down. Loans, credit card debts, late payments. The total amount was overwhelming. Then he said the number. $300,000. I looked up. "You're asking me to pay $300,000. My mom quickly responded. "Not asking, helping." That word bothered me. Helping. As if refusing meant I was hurting him. Ryan looked at me. "You can afford it." I sat there quietly, because that sentence explained everything. Not a, "I'm sorry for everything." Not a, "I know I treated you badly." Not a, "I understand why you might hesitate." Just a, "You can afford it." The same attitude he had always had. I looked at my family. The people who had spent years telling me family comes first. The people who expected me to sacrifice opportunities. The people who told me money shouldn't matter. And now they were asking me to give up a massive part of my future because Ryan needed rescuing again. I took a breath. Then I said, "No." Nobody spoke. My dad looked confused. "What do you mean?" "I mean, no, I'm not paying this." My mother's expression changed immediately. "How can you say that?" "Because this isn't my responsibility. He's your brother." "I know." then act like it. I looked at her. I have acted like it for years. The argument lasted hours. They brought up everything. Family, loyalty, forgiveness. Everything except the truth. The truth was that they had spent my entire life protecting Ryan from consequences, and now they wanted me to protect him too. Finally, I said something I had wanted to say for years. When I needed support, nobody told Ryan to sacrifice for me. The room became quiet. When I got accepted into college, nobody asked him to give something up. Silence. When he borrowed money from me, nobody told him family doesn't keep score. My dad looked away. When did family matter? Nobody answered. Because they knew. The next week, the family pressure started. My aunt called. My cousins sent messages. Apparently, my parents had told everyone that I was refusing to help Ryan despite having money. Nobody knew the full story. They only knew the version where I was the selfish person. One cousin told me, if I had that kind of money, I would help my family. I replied, that's easy to say when you don't have a family that only remembers you when they need something. They didn't respond. Then came the biggest twist. A few weeks later, I discovered Ryan had done something I never expected. He had used my name on a loan application. At first, I thought it was a misunderstanding. Then I saw the documents. My information. My signature. Except I hadn't signed anything. Ryan had forged my name. He wasn't just asking me to save him. He had already tried making me legally responsible for his mistakes. That was the moment something inside me finally broke. I had spent years defending him. Years believing he was just immature. Years hoping he would eventually change. But this wasn't someone making mistakes. This was someone willing to hurt me to avoid facing the consequences of his own choices. I reported it, not because I wanted revenge, because I needed to protect myself. The investigation proved what happened. Ryan eventually admitted it. He claimed he panicked. He claimed he never intended for anything bad to happen. But intentions don't erase actions. My parents begged me not to pursue it. He could ruin his life. I looked at them. He was willing to ruin mine. For once, nobody had a response. Ryan faced the consequences of his actions. His business collapsed completely. His reputation was damaged. He had to rebuild his life from the beginning. And strangely enough, that was probably the first time he had ever truly been forced to grow up. But the final thing I learned wasn't about Ryan. It was about myself. For years, I thought I needed my family's approval. I thought if I worked hard enough, helped enough, and forgave enough, eventually they would see my value. They never did. And maybe they never would. But I finally understood something. My value was never determined by whether they recognized it. Today, I live quietly. I have a home I love, a career I'm proud of, people around me who appreciate me for who I am, not for what I can provide. My relationship with my family is distant now. Some relatives apologized after learning the truth. Others never did. And honestly, I've accepted that. Because peace is worth protecting. The strangest thing about being the scapegoat in a family is that you spend so much time wondering why nobody chooses you. Then one day, you realize something. You can choose yourself. And sometimes, that is the choice that finally saves you. I wasn't the spare child. I wasn't the backup plan. I wasn't the person who existed to fix everyone else's mistakes. I was simply someone who spent years in a place where I wasn't appreciated. Leaving that role behind wasn't selfish. It was the first time I had ever truly respected myself. Story 2, the person I married was a stranger. Part 1. For most of my marriage, I genuinely believed I was one of the lucky ones. I thought I had found someone who understood me, someone who would stand beside me through the difficult parts of life, and someone who wanted the same future that I did. Looking back now, the hardest part wasn't discovering that my wife cheated. The hardest part was realizing that the person I trusted completely had been living a completely different reality than the one I thought we shared. My name is Daniel, and this is the story of how I discovered my wife had been having an affair for nearly 2 years, how the people around me noticed before I did, and how the person who thought she was destroying my life actually gave me the chance to finally build one without her. I met Claire when I was 26 years old. At the time, I wasn't looking for a relationship. I had just started focusing on my career, trying to become financially stable, and honestly wasn't interested in dealing with complicated relationships. Then I met her at a friend's backyard barbecue. What caught my attention wasn't that she was the loudest or most outgoing person there. Actually, it was the opposite. Everyone else was talking, laughing, and trying to be noticed, but Claire was sitting slightly away from the group with a book in her hands. I walked over and asked her what she was reading. She looked up and smiled. Something boring enough that nobody asks me about it. I laughed and asked if that was her way of avoiding conversations. She smiled and said, "Usually." That conversation turned into hours of talking. We talked about our childhoods, our goals, the places we wanted to visit, and the kind of life we hoped to build someday. By the end of the night, I remember driving home thinking that I had met someone different, someone genuine. 2 years later, we were married. The beginning of our marriage was honestly everything I had hoped for. We bought a small house that needed some work, but we were excited because it was ours. We adopted a dog that immediately became the center of our lives. We didn't have unlimited money, and we weren't the type of couple who constantly posted expensive vacations or fancy dinners online. But we were happy. At least I thought we were. The first signs that something was wrong were so small that I ignored them. Claire started staying later at work. At first, I didn't question it because I knew her job was stressful. Then she started taking her phone everywhere. Not just normally carrying it around. I mean everywhere. If she went to the kitchen, the phone came with her. If she went to the bathroom, the phone came with her. If she left the room for 30 seconds, she took it. Again, I ignored it. Because when you love someone, your brain naturally tries to protect the image you have of them. I didn't want to believe something was wrong. A few months later, she changed her phone password. That alone wouldn't have bothered me. Everyone deserves privacy. But when I asked casually, "Did you change your password?" she immediately became defensive. Why? I was confused. I was just asking. Why are you asking about my phone? I'm not accusing you of anything. She looked annoyed. You don't trust me. That was the first time I noticed something strange. I wasn't asking an unreasonable question. But somehow, I ended up feeling like I had done something wrong. Her appearance changed too. Again, by itself, that wasn't suspicious. People change. People want to feel better about themselves. But Claire suddenly became much more interested in looking perfect before work. She bought new clothes, started wearing perfume every morning, spent more time getting ready. At first, I actually complimented her. "You look amazing." She smiled. Thanks. But deep down, I had a strange feeling. It wasn't that she looked good. It was that she looked like she was trying to impress someone. One night, I finally asked her if everything was okay. We were sitting on the couch watching television when I said, "Is something going on at work? You've been staying late a lot recently." The reaction I got surprised me. She immediately sat up. "What does that mean?" I looked at her. "What? Are you accusing me of something?" "No, I literally just asked if everything was okay." She shook her head. "I can't believe you would even ask me that." The conversation ended with me apologizing. I remember lying in bed afterward wondering why I felt guilty. I wasn't the one who had done anything wrong. But somehow, I was the one trying to repair the conversation. A few months later, I noticed money missing from our joint account. It wasn't a huge amount. A few $100s here and there. When I asked about it, Claire said she had bought some clothes. I said that was fine. I wasn't angry about spending money. I just wanted us to communicate. But again, she became defensive. "Do you have a problem with what I buy?" "No, because it feels like you do." I stopped arguing. At that point, I started noticing a pattern. Every concern became an accusation. Every question became an attack. And every conversation somehow ended with me feeling like the problem. The moment everything changed happened on a completely normal Tuesday. I had finished work early because I had a doctor's appointment nearby. Afterward, I stopped at a coffee shop close to Claire's office. I wasn't looking for anything. I wasn't suspicious. I was just getting coffee. Then I saw her. She was sitting at a table near the window. Across from her was a man. At first, I didn't think anything of it. People meet coworkers for coffee all the time. Then I noticed the way they were sitting. The way they looked at each other. The way Claire was smiling. It was the same smile she used to give me when we first met. Then the man reached across the table and held her hand. And she didn't pull away. A few seconds later, she leaned forward and kissed him. I stood there completely frozen. My mind immediately tried to find another explanation. There had to be one. There had to be something I was misunderstanding. But deep down, I already knew. I didn't walk over. I didn't yell. I didn't create a scene. People always ask why someone doesn't immediately confront a cheating partner when they see it happen. The truth is, sometimes your brain refuses to accept something that painful immediately. If I walked over, it became real. If I stayed silent, even for a few more minutes, part of me could pretend there was another explanation. So I left. I went home. And I waited. When Claire arrived later that evening, she acted completely normal. She walked through the door, smiled, and asked, "How was your day?" I looked at the person I had spent years loving. The person I had trusted. The person who had just been with someone else. And the strangest part was how easily she acted like nothing happened. I answered, "It was fine." She looked at me. "Are you okay?" I almost laughed, because she was asking if I was okay while knowing exactly what she had done. That night, I didn't sleep. I just stared at the ceiling and replayed everything in my head. Every late night, every excuse, every time I ignored my instincts. And for the first time, I wondered how long this had really been happening. The next morning, I made a decision I never thought I would make. I checked. I wasn't proud of it, but I needed the truth. I needed to know if I was imagining things or if my entire marriage had been a lie. What I found was worse than I expected. Messages, pictures, hotel reservations, years of conversations. Almost 2 years. 2 years of my wife telling another man things that she used to tell me. Things like how she missed him, how she wished they had met earlier, how she felt unhappy at home. And the sentence that hurt the most was, "My husband doesn't understand me." Because the truth was, I had spent years trying to understand her. She just never told me she had already left. The person I married was a stranger part 2. I spent almost an entire day sitting with the information I had found. I didn't know what emotion I was supposed to feel. People imagine discovering an affair as one big explosion of anger, where someone immediately knows what to do and starts making plans. That wasn't my experience. I felt numb. It was like my brain understood what happened, but the rest of me hadn't caught up yet. For nearly 2 years, I had been living in the same house, sleeping beside the same person, and building a future with someone who had secretly been creating a completely different life behind my back. The hardest part wasn't just that Claire cheated. It was realizing how many moments I had trusted her while she already knew the truth. That weekend, I decided I couldn't keep pretending. I asked Claire if we could talk. She immediately noticed something was wrong. "What's going on?" I placed my phone on the table with the messages open. For a few seconds, she just stared at it. The expression on her face changed instantly. Not confusion, not surprise, fear. And that told me everything I needed to know. She didn't ask what I found. She didn't ask if there was some misunderstanding. She already knew. "How long?" I asked. She started crying. "Daniel, please let me explain." "How long?" She looked down. "About a year and a half." I laughed quietly because I didn't know what else to do. A year and a half. Almost 2 years of lies. Almost 2 years of her coming home and pretending everything was normal. Almost 2 years of me believing we were working through problems together while she was creating new ones. The first thing she said was that she was sorry. The second thing she said was that she never meant for it to happen. That sentence bothered me more than I expected. Because affairs don't just happen. People don't accidentally send hundreds of messages. They don't accidentally meet someone repeatedly. They don't accidentally hide hotel reservations. There were thousands of decisions involved. Thousands of moments where she could have stopped. But she didn't. Then came the explanations. "I was unhappy. You were always busy. We stopped connecting. I felt lonely. I listened carefully. Not because I believed those excuses. Because I wanted to understand how someone could justify hurting another person. What stood out to me was that every explanation focused on why she did it. Not what she did. There was no, "I betrayed you. I lied to you. I understand that I destroyed your trust." It was all about her feelings, her loneliness, her unhappiness, her needs. I asked her one question. "Did you ever plan on telling me?" She stayed quiet. That silence answered everything. No, she wasn't planning on telling me. She was planning on keeping both lives. The marriage that provided stability, and the affair that provided excitement. I left the house that night. I didn't know where I was going at first. I just knew I couldn't stay there. I ended up sleeping at a friend's place. The next morning, I sat in my car outside the house and looked at it. The same house, we had chosen together. The same place where we had celebrated birthdays, holidays, and milestones. Suddenly, it didn't feel like my home anymore. It felt like a place where I had been pretending. I filed for divorce a few weeks later. Claire was shocked. I think she expected me to forgive her. Maybe not immediately. Maybe not easily. But eventually, because that was what I had always done. I was the person who gave second chances. The person who tried to fix things. The person who believed love meant fighting through difficult moments. She never expected that one day I would stop fighting for something that only one person was trying to save. The divorce process was where I saw another side of Claire. At first, she begged me to reconsider. She promised she would quit her job. She promised she would go to counseling. She promised she would prove she could change. But when she realized I wasn't coming back, her attitude changed. Suddenly, the conversation became about what she deserved. She wanted the house. She wanted part of my savings. She wanted things to remain as comfortable as possible. And I remember thinking how strange that was. The person who had broken our marriage was now upset that she might lose the benefits of it. Then something happened that I never expected. The man Claire had been seeing, Jason, suddenly disappeared. At first, I didn't know why. Then I found out the truth. He had never planned to leave his wife. Claire wasn't his future. She was his escape. When things became complicated, when Claire was no longer a secret and there were actual consequences, he walked away. The same person she risked our marriage for abandoned her almost immediately. A few weeks later, Claire called me. I almost didn't answer, but something made me pick up. She was crying. I made a mistake. I sat quietly, because for the first time, I wasn't angry. I just felt tired. I asked, "Do you miss me?" She didn't answer immediately. Then she said, "Yes." I thought about that. Then I replied, "No, you miss what I gave you." She became quiet. You miss having someone who loved you completely. You miss having someone who trusted you. You miss having someone who was always there. That's not true, isn't it? She didn't respond, because deep down she knew. The next twist came during the divorce proceedings. Information came out about Jason that Claire didn't know. He wasn't just cheating with her. He had been cheating on his wife with multiple people. Claire had believed their relationship was special. She believed he understood her in a way I didn't. But the truth was much simpler. She wasn't the exception. She was just another person he lied to. Some people might think that finding this out made me happy. It didn't. I didn't celebrate. I didn't feel like I won. Because the truth was, by that point, I didn't want revenge anymore. I just wanted peace. After the divorce was finalized, I focused on rebuilding myself. The first few months were difficult. I had spent years building my life around another person. Now I had to figure out who I was alone. I started exercising. I reconnected with friends I had neglected. I traveled. I started doing things I had always wanted to do, but kept putting off. And slowly, I realized something. My marriage ending wasn't the end of my life. It was the beginning of one I actually controlled. A year later, I ran into Claire at a grocery store. It was completely random. We both stopped when we recognized each other. She looked surprised. "Daniel, hey." For a moment, neither of us knew what to say. Finally, she asked, "How have you been?" And the strange thing was, I was actually good. Not pretending. Not trying to prove anything. Actually good. I'm doing well. She smiled slightly. I heard you're doing great. I am. I'm happy for you. I believed she meant it. Maybe she finally understood what she had lost. Maybe she didn't. Either way, it no longer mattered. Before we left, she said something unexpected. I really did love you. I looked at her, and I believed that she probably did, in her own way. But I had learned something important. Love alone isn't enough. Someone can love you and still hurt you. Someone can love you and still choose themselves over you. A marriage isn't built only on feelings. It's built on trust, respect, honesty, and choices. For a long time, I thought revenge meant making Claire suffer the way I suffered. I thought the best ending would be seeing her regret everything. But eventually, I realized something. The greatest revenge wasn't watching her life fall apart. The greatest revenge was creating a life where her actions no longer had power over me. Today, I have a peaceful life. I have a home I enjoy coming back to. I have people around me who value honesty. I have relationships where I don't feel like I have to constantly question whether someone is telling me the truth. And sometimes, I think about the person I was before everything happened. The person who trusted too easily. The person who ignored obvious signs because he loved someone. I don't hate that person. He was doing the best he could with the information he had. But I'm grateful I became someone stronger. Because Claire didn't destroy my life. She forced me to rebuild it. And the life I built afterward is one she will never be a part of.